some we'll do some scenario discussions as well. We'll get interactive here and there. And then we'll talk about just in case a child reports something to you, how are you going to take the whole concern and what are the things you are supposed to do and the roles that we all play as churches, as parents, as health professionals, as teachers, as civil servants, as loved ones, as concerned citizens. What are we supposed to do? We'll have conversations on that, and then we'll end for the part one, and then we'll have another session at another day on the part two. Well, I can't start a session without checking in on ourselves. And today is a very simple question when it comes to our check-in. The question is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate how you are feeling right now? I think we woke up early in the morning, all through the day till this time at 6:18. How would you rate yourself at the moment? All right. 10 means that you are very, very, very good. All right. Optimum. And then 0 means that you are not good. This you can place your feedback on this in the chat box, and then I can check in, find out how we are doing, and then we'll continue our session. Okay, so we have Miss Obin saying that she's 7 out of 10. Okay, Karen is saying he's 4 out of 10. Okay, Selassie 7 out of 10. Diana 8 out of 10. Sanita a 5 out of 10. Ramatu 7 out of 10. Mr. Johnson, it's nice having you 8 out of 10. That's good. That's good. Averagely we are doing well. Like we are actually doing well. Okay, that's seems to be like a happy Sunday for us. Fantastic. Now, the next thing about this rating is after you figure out where you are at or how you are doing, the next question you should be asking yourself is, what can you do to improve the rating that you have right now? So if you're 8 out of 10, what is making you 8 out of 10? And what can you do in your own power to move from the 8 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10? Or if you're 5 out of 10, why are you 5 out of 10? And then what can you do to move yourself from 5 out of 10 to 6 out of 10? Don't go too far, just one step further. And you can choose not to put it on the chat box. It's a personal thing. Just try to do an introspection of yourself and get to know why you are the rating that you rated yourself and what you can do to be able to get to the next point. It's necessary because we start our day, we move through our day all the time. And then sometimes we don't even know where exactly we are at. We might know that something is not going right, but we cannot pinpoint. So it's an opportunity, a quick check-in for yourself so that you can know where you are at and then how you can move on. So I have, I think Bishop Bain or Ethel saying that making time to rest will help her to move from the 7 out of 10 to 8 out of 10. So this is a great example of what I'm talking about. If you get to know exactly what you need to do or what the people around you can do for you or your environment or your social support can do for you to move you to a step higher, you're good to go. And it helps you to stay centered and stay present. So thank you for joining me for this quick check-in of how you are feeling. Now let's start our conversation, full conversation. Okay, so again with it's been an interactive session. This is just a beginning, so please just let's get interactive. What makes a child feel safe from your point of view? If we say a child is safe, if we say a child is feeling being in a place where they feel okay and feel comfortable, what do you think are the things that will make that child feel safe? What makes a child feel safe? You can try to put yourself in the same scenario. Try to go back in your own childhood where you were a child, maybe 10, 20, 50 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. Figure out how you felt safe and what made you feel safe. What makes a child feel safe? You can put in the chat box and then I'll read it from here for you. What makes a child feel safe? As for the interactive session, we'll be having quite a lot. At a point, I'll make us unmute and then talk, but this is just a very simple one in our chat box. So let's put in the chat box. What makes a child feel safe? And of course, a child is someone who cannot really take charge of the things that they do very well. The Ghanaian law talks about a particular age for a child, and it's below 18. So according to you, what makes a child or a person that is below 18 feel safe? You can take it anywhere, whether at a church place, whether at a religious center, whether in a community, whether at home. What makes a child feel safe? All right, so we have Ramatu giving us a very first point. When a child is aware of the proper protection he or she has in their life, it makes them feel safe. Thank you for sharing, Ramatu. So Diana mentions, so safe environment, not exposed to harmful objects, and toxic people make a child feel safe. Thank you for sharing. So Ms. Oben, having adults that treat them well, having a safe and happy environment makes a child feel safe. Okay, great. Karen, when they can share their thoughts or move freely without fear. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. All right. We have Harry. When they have someone who listens to them, when they get to share, it makes them feel safe. All right. All right. So we are all on the same trajectory then. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. All right. So let's continue our session, and please just get prepared for the next question that we'll place in the chat box as well. Now, what is safeguarding? I think we hear this most of the time. What is safeguarding here and there? Today we are talking about safeguarding, and simply safeguarding means creating an environment where the child or children feel safe, they feel respected, they feel heard, they feel protected from harm, and they are able to thrive in general. And all the feedback that we got from us gave the same information or a roundup information of all that I just gave, right? When the caregiver gives a lot of trust, when they're able to share their emotions, when they have adults to help them to treat them well, when they're in environments where they are not exposed to harm, or when the child is aware that he's in a space that they feel protected, all of that means safeguarding. Now, there's also another word that we mostly use whenever we are talking about safeguarding, and that is child protection. But there are two different meanings. Safeguarding happens to be the umbrella of which child protection falls under. So safeguarding is proactive and child protection is reactive. Proactive because it mostly begins. We have to start with safeguarding, and the child protection only comes in when something has happened or we suspect that something has happened, and then child protection team take charge. So just to know, safeguarding is generally the umbrella, and it's where we create an environment when a child is feels safe, respected, heard, protected from harm, and able to thrive. So just a quick definition of the two, or get to know the differences between the two. So safeguarding here, you create the safe environment, and basically it's for us to prevent harm on the child. Here, there are policies, there are boundaries that are created, and there are supervision. And here, there's also teaching of the children about safety, about their rights, and about how they can report. And also, it's everybody tends to participate when it comes to safeguarding. However, when it comes to child protection, it's not everybody that entirely participates, because here the child protection team takes more charge. So here, the child protection tend to respond to a harm that has happened or a harm that they suspect is about to happen. And here they respond to when the harm has, as I mentioned, occurred or probably suspected. Here, reporting and referrals happen. And also here, it involves information collection. And if it has to do with law, license, service persons here or security persons, investigation comes in, and the intervention from all of us to tend to come in. Now, why are we separating the two, or why are we trying to explain the two? It's because whenever we are talking about safeguarding, it's very necessary for us to project what might happen to be able to protect the children. However, there might be some gaps and something might happen. So if it tends to happen and these gaps are still opened, the child protection team or child protection structure or systems has to come in to be able to sort this out. So safeguarding is good, like what we are doing right now. This is safeguarding. But if you are in a hospital and a child comes with bruises on them, or probably they have been abused sexually, here the child protection team sets in. I'm hoping that we get the difference between the two. So we continue. Now, who is in charge of safeguarding or who is in charge of protecting a child? Now, all of us tend to have ways or parts that we need to play when you are protecting a child. Parents have a part they play. The government has a part they play. Siblings of the child have a part they play. Teachers, school leaders, religious organizations, NGOs, police, and neighbors, health workers, community leaders, friends, every single person in a community do have a part to play when it comes to protecting a child or safeguarding a child. Now, so why are we protecting the child? What at all are we protecting the child against? We are protecting the child against any form of abuse, and we will turn it as child abuse. Now, so what's child abuse? So child abuse is an act or any form of act or a failure to protecting a child against a harm that has probably happened or a harm that is about to happen. So we have a situation where the abuse itself probably has happened. So we are trying to protect the child against the act itself. Or if you tend to fail to protect the child against a potential harm, it's also child abuse. You might know that maybe a child getting closer to an adult or getting closer to or doing something that will probably harm them, and then you turn a blind eye on it, it's also child abuse. It's not always physical, like you have to hit the child. It can also be emotional, it can be psychological. It can be you just leaving the child by themselves at home, maybe locking the door and then keeping them in the room and going to work, or keeping them in your car, locking them in the car, you're going for a quick buy at the shop and come back. All of this can fall under child abuse. If probably you've sent the child to go buy something, and the child is younger and the child has to cross a road, here it could be child abuse. Or you've left the child, you forgot to give the child money to go to school, or the child is not taking care of themselves and you're not guiding the child, and this has happened for a longer period, yes, it falls under the category of child abuse. So it's not necessarily all the time physical. And if you you fail to take an action to protect a child, that might you fail to all right. Or I fail to protect a child where there's a potential harm, that also falls under child abuse. Now, what are we supposed to say? All right. Or what are some of the things that happens to be able to categorize what is physical or what are the types of child abuse? Because there are types when it comes to child abuse. And it's necessary for us to know about these types of child abuse that we have. We have the physical We have the physical abuse, we have emotional abuse, we have sexual abuse, and then we have neglect. So these are the main four categories. Now, when you're talking about something like sexual abuse, they are quite under point under or sub under sexual abuse, like sexual exploitation, all of that fall under sexual abuse. But these are the four main categories. So what are some of them that we know? I mean, they are very common and we see them often. So physical, we have the beating of a child, burning. When you are choking a child, for example, you're not giving giving food to the child and you don't take your time and you are forcing all the food into the child. It's a form of abuse and of course falls under physical abuse. When we are trying to hold a child, or when we instead of holding the child, we tend to shake the child, or probably you are holding the child by the hand and you shake the child like that physically, where it tends to affect the arm, it falls under physical abuse. When we tend to pinch the child in a way, sometimes we don't want people to see that we are hitting the child, so we tend to pinch the child at the back somewhere. It all falls under physical abuse. So physical abuse basically talks about things that happens physically on the child's body, whether hitting, something that you can see on the child's body. It could be like a mark, whatsoever there is, it's physical abuse. Like our parents using, or some parents or some adults using belts and canes when we're kids, and they'll just make sure they'll place the cane in water, and by morning it will be very heavy. They'll use it on us at assembly, or sometimes they'll put it in kerosene in different ways that they can use to make us feel the pain. All of that fall under physical abuse. And the next one is emotional abuse or psychological abuse. And this one, if you're not careful, you will easily miss it because sometimes you won't see it. And people who go through this, or children who go through this, tend to hide it. Now, under emotional abuse, we have humiliation, we have constant criticisms, we have rejection, right? Where the children are playing together and then a group of them do not want to play with a particular child and they leave the child alone. Or if you are a teacher, you've observed it for a while, and then you group a particular student to play together and you leave one particular child aside, it falls under rejecting the child. A situation where you're a mother and you give particular consent or give help to a group, your part of your children, and leave a particular one out, it's rejection and it falls under emotional abuse, especially when it continues for a longer period. Also, when the child is exposed to domestic violence, it does fall under emotional abuse because they observe maybe mom and dad most of the time fighting at home, or they observe their siblings fighting at home most of the time, or they hear all the negative words and all the negative things, or the harsh words all the time consistently. Yeah, they are going through some form of abuse as well. And that is emotional abuse. Bullying falls under emotional abuse as well. Most of the time, our students and our children go through this in school consistently. Yes, it is emotional and psychological abuse as well. And it tends to affect mostly their self-esteem. But if you're not careful, you wouldn't see it because it will be hidden most of the time. The next one is sexual abuse. And when it comes to sexual abuse, I think that's one that we mostly talk about. This is a situation where a child is being touched inappropriately, or the child is not ready to be touched because it's a child, and then an adult or a child to child or a younger adult, whatsoever there is, touches a child inappropriately. Another one is when the child is exposed. Also, when the child is exposed to pornographic or sexual content or sexual conversations, um, when this thing happens, it falls under violation. It's a violation and it falls under sexual abuse. When the child actually goes through rape or defilement, all right? I mean, children under a particular age, 16 years is defilement. 18 and above is rape, so mostly defilement. It is sexual abuse. And of course, we have abuse where sexual abuse where their pictures might be sent online against their consent. All of that falls under sexual abuse as well. Now, this is another key area that sometimes we forget, and that is neglect. And we see this most of the time in our society, but just that we sometimes we don't have the confidence to call it out. And this falls under child abuse as well. It has to do with neglect, where a child might be going through poor hygiene. The fingernails are so dirty, the hair is unkempt, the teeth has not been brushed, the school uniform is dirty, the child is smelling. You can see that the child has not taken the bath for a while. You realize that the child is super hungry, comes to school without money, comes to school without food, and you realize that sometimes even the food that the child is eating might have expired, but the child is still eating it irrespective. You can see maybe the child is going around asking for money or food from other people, right? Maybe the child is not well, but the parent has still pushed the child to go back to school. Or you realize that the child has been allowed to be at home without any form of supervision there is. All of this fall under neglect. And this is really key. And if you're not careful as well, this will happen. And then sometimes adults around the child can have different excuses for their actions, but it falls under child abuse, especially when it's consistent. Sometimes the parent could forget or the guardian could forget, and it happens sometimes where some parents will come home and then they forget that they've not picked their child up from school. And this happens sometimes in schools. A child can be at home, will be in school, everybody has closed, and then the person who is taking care of the child in school will still be with the child around 7 p.m. The parent hasn't come. And sometimes the parent is in a meeting or the parent has traveled or a situation has happened. That's why the child is there with the support teacher and they'll be in school for a longer period. That happens once or twice. But if this thing consistently happens, then it has to fall under neglect and it has to do with child abuse because they are not taking full um, responsibility of the child. And that falls under child abuse. So these are the four main abuse that we have, of which we have other subs under it as well: physical, emotional, sexual, and then neglect of the child. Just to confirm that I'm not talking to myself, please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So I am going to continue from here. Now, what are some of the things that will indicate that a child has gone through abuse? One we are going to talk about is sexual abuse. Now, what are some of the things that will indicate that a child has gone through sexual abuse? Most of the time, we mostly talk about the fact that if maybe the child has actually gone through a forceful sexual intercourse, the child will either be bleeding or maybe the child will walk in a particular way that will show that the child is in pain. There are also instances where you realize that maybe the child keeps scratching their private area. Sometimes they tend to press their private area to the edge of the table or the edge of the chair. Could be an indication that maybe the child has gone through some form of abuse. It's not all the time. Sometimes it could be hygiene issues, major, but it could be that the child has gone through some form of abuse. When you realize that the child is using inappropriate words that is supposed to be for adult or is so much exposed and use some words that are quite strong, it's a possibility that the child has been abused and probably is still being abused. If you realize that the child is over sexualizing themselves, where they tend to wear short skirts, they tend to expose the part of their body. Sometimes they want to um, uh, tattoo themselves out as young as they are, or sometimes they want to pierce and over pierce. There's a possibility that there's some form of abuse that has come. Also, maybe if the child is going through or having some sexually transmitted diseases, specifically, it could be that the child might have gone through some sexual abuse. You also realize that maybe the child enters the washroom and stays there for a very long time, or the child is scared of entering the washroom, or maybe the child is scared of a particular adult, or maybe there's a quick change in the mood of the child. All of it could be that the child has gone through some form of abuse, which might be linked to sexual abuse. So these are some of the indicators for sexual abuse. And of course, there are lots and individual differences. Some people show it more than some people. Sometimes so someone who can come and then cry and cry and cry and cry, and they might not, she doesn't really want to talk about anything. So this is a case sometime I had, and the client was not giving to me directly, but a family member spoke with me, and that person had been abused. It was an adult, not a child. And then the person came home one day just crying, cried and cried and cried without saying anything, just kept on crying. And they were worried about what exactly was happening to the person. Now, when the person came down and toned down and decided to speak, it was because she had been sexually abused. So most of the time, it can pop in like that, crying for no specific reason, and you might never really know what is happening, but that might be what has happened to them. So that's one of the indicators for sexual abuse. Let's talk about physical abuse. And this is more glaring. You will see this often. So most of the time, this one is not really hidden. You realize that the child might have is having some physical bruises on them, depending on the skin tone of the person. It can be very clear. Sometimes it's red, sometimes it's black, sometimes it's a little bit brownish. If the person is white-skinned, you realize that sometimes it's a little bit violent or move deep of a sort. All of it falls. You can see that as a physical abuse. Sometimes there's something that you cannot explain, but there's a bruise on them you can't explain. All of a sudden, you saw them in a particular bandage on their hand. There could be a possibility that something has happened like that. um, you see them acting out or trying to bully somebody else instead. It could be that they've gone through some physical abuse by themselves. So instead of they waiting for someone to bully them, they want to bully the person first or hit the person first, right? Or you realize that the person seems to be very introverted, doesn't want to talk, is always afraid, want to keep by themselves. Even when they know the answer in class, they don't want to raise their hands. There's a possibility that they've gone through some physical abuse, so they are trying to keep to themselves, right? You realize that in class, maybe they are acting out in class, or they tend to mostly second guess themselves. So their self-esteem has been shattered to the extent that even though they have the answer, um, they want to keep asking you for you to confirm that whether their answer is right or their answer is wrong, or they keep saying sorry for so many times. They'll keep apologizing for something they've not even done, right? All of it could be that the child had gone through some form of physical abuse and they are trying to show you. So that could be other indicators. Now, emotional abuse and neglect has been put together, and these are some of the signs as well. You realize that some of them have difficulty keeping relationships or holding on to relationships. Sometimes they see themselves not to be enough, so they keep following instead of taking charge. So instead of others, they deciding what to do or being autonomous, they tend to follow other people's point of view as well. So there seems to be an alpha and then the followers. And most of the time, they find themselves in the followers and they are always following other people and they can't decide for themselves. They hold on and keep everything to themselves, right? Someone who's going through neglect will tend to steal food and always be complaining about hunger, always be asking money from other people, or they will need assurance most of the time, right? Other indicators for neglect will also be like they have poor hygiene. I've mentioned it already. They tend to um, uh, not to bath, brush their teeth, clean their hair. Sometimes they don't pay their school fees for a longer period. There's a possibility of neglect going on there, right? Sometimes people they tend to lie. They tell a lot of lies, especially those who have emotional abuse. They tell a lot of lies in order to find ways and means around things. And of course, all this will tend to affect their grading and then their academics as well. So these are some of the indicators for emotional abuse and then neglect. So let's push further. And this is where we get interactive. Now, so this is a very simple scenario that I've created for us to get interactive in the chat box again. And I'll read the scenario out and then we'll put, if you feel like you should give a feedback in the chat box, you can. If you feel like you want me to unmute you so that you can speak under a minute or two on your point of view, also you can. So I'll read the first scenario out, and then we'll get interactive on this, and then we'll take it from there. So it reads, a female teacher frequently comments on a year or 17-year-old boy's physical development in front of other students. She says things such as, look at how muscular and handsome you have become. If I were to be your classmate, you would have been the boy I would like to date. The boy laughs along with the teacher and does not appear uncomfortable. So you happen to be a colleague teacher and have observed this for a while. Will this concern you? And if this will concern you, what will you do? And from your point of view, what will be the effect on the child? I read it again as we think through and then want to give our feedback. So a female teacher frequently comments on a 17-year-old boy's physical development in front of other students. She says things such as, look at how muscular and handsome you have become. If I were to be your classmate, you would be the boy I would like to go out with or I would like to date. The boy laughs most of the time when the teacher says this and appear not to be uncomfortable with the comments that the teacher makes. You happen to be a colleague teacher and you have observed this happening for a while. What would you do? Would this concern you or not? Is there anyone who would like to share with us? You can just raise up your hand and then I'll allow you to share. So we have our first comment in the chat box. It's inappropriate even if the teen is comfortable. Thank you for sharing. What do you also think? Well, the child is feeling comfortable. The child is not worried about it. So what do you think? Is there anyone who is sharing with us? You're a colleague teacher and you've observed another teacher constantly saying stuff about another 17-year-old boy, making comments like, look at how muscular you are. You've become so handsome. And if you were in my class or I was supposed to be in your class, you'd be a boy I would want to go out with. And you're a teacher and you've observed this. What would you do? All right, so we have Rosalind hand up. Please, would you like to unmute and share?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening,
Yeah,
Rosalind.
thank you so much for this presentation. Yeah, this is a serious issue to be concerned about if I were to be a colleague, because the teacher is supposed to be safeguarding such a child and not, leading that child in any form of abuse. So this is totally unprofessional, and that teacher must be called to or must be warned about those comments.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rosalind. Thank you for sharing. All right. Any other person would like to share?
Yeah, I would like to comment.
Hi, Charles.
First of all, this is Dr. Charles Wobo. I would address the teacher directly, personally later,
Okay.
because the context is that a lot of people in our community here are not well informed on the issue of sexual harassment from how they were brought up and how it's treated in Ghana. So sometimes when they make these jokes and whatever, they think it's a joke, but it is difficult. So engaging the person first and trying to educate the person on this is very, very important. I'm also worried about the child here, because also the child laughing also is kind of learning how to accept being sexually harassed, which is also common in our contexts. A lot of our girls get a lot of these advances and these kind of things, and they just shoo it over. While in other countries, they actually report it, and the people might be in trouble. So that is why there is a culture of a lot of people accepting, and not taking this kind of thing serious. Why it's something that should be serious. So it's something that even over time, a formal training or education program, maybe in a very, will I say, child-friendly way on sexual harassment will be something to institute for children, because there's some kind of, training so that they know that, you are not supposed to accept that. So on both parties, there's something corrective that can be done. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing, Dr. Nwobo. Can we have the final person on this and then we can take it from there? Mr. Johnson, I saw your hand up at a point in time. Would you like to share?
Yes, please, Mr. Panty.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, please. First of all, it will concern me.
Okay.
And because it will concern me, what I will do about it is that this is a colleague. So I have a professional relationship with the colleague. So I will let the colleague, first of all, know that there is what we call professional boundary.
Right.
Even among teachers, and then much more between teachers and students. And then I'll also let my colleague teacher know that the comment she's making to the teacher, based on what we are learning right now, falls under some form of sexual abuse, which is like a non-contact sexual abuse, which is the grooming. So the teacher, consciously or unconsciously, is grooming this young man.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing, Mr. Johnson. Sarah, the very final one, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pinto, for the wonderful presentation.
Right.
What I would like to say is that an MP who has given this kind of remark in public, later on he was saying, oh, I was joking, but he has to apologize publicly because it was a wrong remark or comment. And this teacher, either she might be a young teacher or an adult, age gap, but what is her role in that classroom? Her role is not only academic education. She is supposed to be a role model and a mother figure, even if she is a young teacher. I don't know how old she is, but if she is giving this kind of remark, that means number one, she's planting a negative feeling or negative information in young boy mind, because he starts behaving in such behavior. He will go out and then he starts doing different things, sexual action. In addition to that, also she is like Peter said, participants.
Okay.
Instead of putting academic information, negative information. So this professional, she has to be even educated how to be there. And then I believe she has gone through teacher's training. So this is not professionalism, it doesn't show any ethical behavior. So she needs to be disciplined even. This is my comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone for sharing as well. And then we'll go to the next scenario. But let me comment on this one before we go to our next scenario. And of course, all the feedback that you've given is right. I like the fact that we all realize that it's concerning. It doesn't matter whether he says it in front of other students or says it in just between himself or herself and then the boy. It's still concerning. Also, Eliza. Okay. Now, another key thing. Yes. Are you speaking on something?
Yes, that's just an addition. So we are all right. Yes, I'll be concerned on all of that. But I think one thing beyond the teacher and then the child as well is for the school to have a policy on harassment in general. This is something that we are advocating for companies, for schools to do. So once you get on board, you are rented, okay, on the policy. And then if you go against it, you are found culpable. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Great. That's the next list I was actually driving at, and I appreciate the fact that you brought it in. Now, the key thing is every institution should have a policy and some systems that work for them. So in situations like this, the systems will work. Now, there's a tweak somewhere. I like the fact that we confront the teacher and then bring the teacher's attention to it. However, if it were to be an institution where they've already done all the trainings regarding safeguarding like we are doing right now, because you've done it already, and the teacher already knows about it, you don't necessarily have to caution the teacher. You just have to let the child protection team get to know about it, and then they'll take it from there, whether the person is your friend or not. So that is another level that we have to get to in our conversation when it comes to safeguarding and child protection. However, all the feedback from you are right, and thank you so much for sharing with your feedback for this particular scenario. Now let's get to the second scenario. Now, scenario 2. Now, so earlier you were teachers. This time around, you are a parent. So you're a parent of a 13-year-old child. It's a girl. So one evening, whilst playing with her younger siblings, you suddenly hear your child or the girl use a sexually explicit adult expression that you would not expect her to know. When you asked where they heard it from, she replied, "Well, I heard it somewhere, and I do not remember." The child appears relaxed and changes the subject quickly. Will this concern you? And if this will concern you, what would you do next as a parent? Again, you're a parent of a 13-year-old child, a girl. One evening, whilst you observe them playing together with her and other siblings, she used a word that is sexually explicit and is an adult expression, which you don't expect her to know, but she knows. When you ask where they heard or where she heard it from, she replied, "Well, I heard it somewhere. I just do not remember." And the child appears very relaxed and quickly changes the conversation, the topic of the conversation. You are a parent. What would you do? And would this actually concern you? Okay, so our first comment is in the chat box. Yes, still concerning. 13-year-old. I will probe because it cannot be random. Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone who would want to share? Of course, there's an opportunity for two of us to share because of our time, so we can continue. So you can let me know, raise up your hand, and then I'll give you the opportunity to share, and then we'll take it from there. Of course, you can also put in the chat box and we'll take it from there. Is someone speaking, please?
Yeah, maybe I should try.
All right, Doc, let's go.
Yeah. So when it comes to issues with teenagers,
Right.
Hello?
Yeah, please continue, Doc. Eliza, I'll call you
Yes.
next, okay?
So when it comes with issues with teenagers, it has to depend on the relationship between the parents and the teenagers.
Right.
So if the parent already is not in a kind of relationship where the teenager already opens up or is closed, it can be a challenge actually getting what you want. So I would suggest bringing in a trusted relative or somebody that you know that can actually engage more with the child to get more information. Secondly, as a parent also, if you're the person that can actually communicate with your child, the first thing that comes in your mind, teenagers, you are not in control of them 24 hours. So you should be asking yourself, is my child currently sexually active, or is my child currently communicating with somebody, or is there some kind of literature with what we have in our systems now, online, YouTube, wherever the person is actually getting this information from? Is it direct or indirect? Whatever it is, the best thing you can do is to focus on the risk, and that is educating your child on sexual and reproductive health to ensure that whatever it is, your child is informed on, basically sex education, what exists, what to protect themselves, because that is the best. Trying to control and maybe, see, it's difficult sometimes, to be in total control, considering that this child will always be in spaces which you cannot control. But the best thing you can do is to empower your child to be educated, to know all aspects of, a comprehensive sex and sexuality education, so that they know to protect themselves, that if they are harassed or whatever, they know what to do. So that is what I would say. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing, Doc. Thank you. Can we have Rosalind? Oh, Eliza, you were about to speak, and then I'll call Rosalind, and then we'll continue.
So definitely, I saying, and I side with the first speaker or the contribution that came earlier than mine. Number one, yes, I'll be concerned, but right away I'll start with some form of education, right? Sexual education will be done, but like that atmosphere. So if you are you're not supposed to be judgmental. A lot of parents are quick to be judgmental, start judging forcefully. Maybe somebody has said it and they've heard it in class, right? They may not have actually even engaged in the sexual act, but they said something around. Being non-judgmental, having a conversation around sexual education and all of that will help, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Can we have the final one from Rosalind and then we continue?
Okay, yes. Yeah, I believe that every parent to be concerned whether they've educated their child or not. But as you said that the child was calm, just like Eliza is saying, the parent should also be calm and try to explore whether the child really understands what she said. Try to be curious and ask more. Oh, what do you understand by this? And through that, she can identify the source or later on maybe educate the child.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
you for sharing. So reading what's in the chat box, yes, I'll be concerned when the child is 13 years old and when it comes off randomly. On what to do, I will be calm about my probing, and even changing the topic means the child knows what they are talking about, right? And as a parent, they're supposed to be generally uncomfortable when it comes to sexual matters. Okay, thank you for sharing. Now, I like your feedback, and of course, it's 100% true. I like the fact that you mentioned, the first speaker mentioned that you'll get an adult who the child is comfortable with in that space to have further conversations with. I added this particular scenario because some of the parents or some of we parents are scared of having the talk with the children, where we feel that we are giving them more information around their age, or we feel like they are not ready to hear some of the things that they are as they are growing. But let's see the internet as a space where the child goes to and you are not there. And of course, that's how it is like. They go to the internet and you are not there. They see things that surprisingly around our age we never really heard about. They know things that we don't even know to some extent. So we have the responsibility of having the talk with them to help them to know what their rights are, to help them to know what is right and what is wrong. So even though it might sound sexual, they still have to know about it. If you want to have your own code names fair, if you want to actually state it as it is, call it as it is, call the human part as it is, you do that. But the conversation has to happen as they grow. As early as 11, 12, 13, some girls become sexually active, some boys become sexually active because of the environment they find themselves in. The internet, sometimes I won't blame the kids because they might be online and then an ad will just pop in at a point in time, and then because of their curiosity, they want to follow and follow and follow, and they find themselves watching some things that beginning they didn't want to find, they didn't want to watch it. So we have to have that conversations with them. And of course, it could also be that indeed there could be somewhere or perpetrator somewhere that has been feeding them with some of this information. That's why a 13-year-old child is making such a comment on that. But of course, that is not entirely what might have been happening. So let's continue our conversation and then let's talk about what the law states in Ghana. I'm not so sure whether the law in Ghana is the same as Nigeria. I doubt that. I'm saying that because of Doc, but just to mention that. So in Ghana,
Oh, I'm in
yes,
Ghana. I'm a
in
Ghanaian
Ghana.
too.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. So in Ghana, a child is anyone that is below 18 years. Now, when we say a child is someone whose best interest has to be considered if you are a parent. So here, children have the right to grow up in a safe and caring environment if it has to be a child, which falls under the Act 1998. The law provides protection against child abuse, neglect, exploitation, and any form of harmful practices against a child. Also, the age of consent is 16 years. Sometimes they say 15, but according to the law, it's 16 years. And any form of sexual abuse or sexual intercourse with the child is termed as defilement. And there's no way around the law. You go to jail on that one. Even if the child gives consent, even when the child is around 17 years, the law still states it as defilement and it's illegal. Any form of abuse, the country's law protects the child against every form of abuse there is. So Why is it that sometimes, the question is, why is it sometimes all this abuse tend to still happen in Ghana? We hear them, we see them, but some parents are scared to take it up by themselves, or the child is even scared to talk about it by him or herself. So there's a question for us, and please, let's take it as we continue our conversation. Now, what are some of the myths and facts when it comes to child protection and child abuse? So some people believe that, which is a myth, that abuse only happens to poor people. When you look at it, sometimes it sounds like it's true, but sometimes it's not true. Right. But the actual fact is, abuse doesn't have any protective measure. It happens to anybody at any point in time. So far as the person might find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, it could happen, or the person is not in an environment that is safe. It doesn't matter whether the person is in a poor home or the person is in a rich home or a middle class, it'll still happen. I think this myth mostly comes up, especially when talk about the fact that the middle class and the rich people have a way or are able to have the resources to protect their children, but those with the poor homes might not be able to have the resources and spaces to protect their children. I guess that's why the myth comes in. But however, it can happen to anybody. Next myth, children always tell someone. Well, that's not true. And this is me being in a school. And children can always go around and around and around and around. And it can tell you a story and you believe the story. But trust me, it has nothing to do with the truth. So children always do not tell someone. They know what is happening, but they'll keep it to themselves. And surprisingly, girls mostly keep it to themselves more than boys, based on my experience in the school. The next myth, stranger is more dangerous. And mostly when it comes to abuse, they are saying that a myth, the stranger is mostly the one who is causing the abuse. However, that's not true. Most of the times, abuse that happens to children are mostly done by people that are closer to them. Family members, friends, adults that are in their community, their own colleagues. So it's not about the stranger. Sometimes it's the person that is very close to them. That makes them feel safe. That makes them, that they tend to trust. Now, another myth, boys are rarely abused. Truth is, boys are also abused and they tend to be victims. And I remember Sarah mentioned what the minister, the member of parliament mentioned, which is in the news, and it was on the girl child, but it also happens on the boy child most of the time, where adult females or mothers can mention that, oh, your child is so handsome. When you grow up, I'll marry you. And this happens most of the time in the same way as the other way around. So this happens to the boys as well. It's not only on the girls, it happens on the boys as well. The final myth, asking questions put ideas in the children's head. And this was what I was mentioning earlier, the talk. When you have open conversations, it helps the child to come to you to tell you what is going on in their life. And it's not always that they have to keep things by themselves or shield things to themselves. They have to be open about it. And if you get the opportunity to have open conversations about some of these things, they'll tell you. They'll tell you to the extent that they will tell you some of the crashes that they have so far. But if you frown upon it and then you make them feel shy or afraid, they won't come to you to even tell you about the crashes that they have so far. But they do tend to have crashes most of the time. Another thing too that I've also observed being in a school with kids is sometimes you realize that some children have crushes on adults, which is concerning, which could fall in one of the abuses, which probably more sexual. But of when this where it's coming from is one of the things that I'm also exploring, because they tend to have crushes on adults and especially on their teachers. And that is something that happens most of the time as well. Now, what are the parts, or what are the parts, or the parts we are supposed to play as the various institutions there is when it comes to safeguarding? So parents, making it simple, parents are supposed to protect. Parents are supposed to create the home that will help their children to come to the house, just in case they go out and they're in a space where they're not okay. There should be a safe space for them at home. So parents should be able to create that safe space for them, to be able to protect them, to give them the education, to have that open conversations with them so that the children will feel safe to come to you to talk about stuff. Schools are more preventative, so they give more education to the teachers, and the teachers will give it more to the students, and they'll give education to the student in order to prevent. So more safeguarding happens most of the time in school. Child protection comes in when things has happened, but it's rarely. Most of the time, it's safeguarding, safeguarding, safeguarding. So schools mostly do preventative and prevention. The government supposed to create systems, and that'll be the last I'll talk about. I'm coming there. Hospitals, where our nurses are, where our psychologists are, where our doctors are, needs to have more training to identify. Because most of the time when it comes to the hospital, situations has already happened, but they have to be able to identify. They have to be able to observe the child and realize that maybe the child is showing signs of keeping to themselves, working in a particular way, scratching their private parts, putting their hands in their pockets and scratching their private parts, or trying to use some particular language, mostly in therapy, and it will make you feel like, no, something has happened somewhere. So you have to ask more questions. So more training to help the child, to be able to help the professional to be able to identify if the child has gone through something. Religious bodies religious bodies, whether Muslim, traditional, whether in our safe space, whether in our churches and all that they have to do is to create safe spaces. Because sometimes the child wouldn't be able to tell the parent or the teacher, but in the space they can speak to their Sunday school teacher or their priest or their pastor or their safomame or someone at church, right? And there should be a safe space where sometimes if the child is being abused at home, the church or the mosque or the traditional space, whatsoever there is, can provide a space for the child to be safe, especially when the child is going through some abuse at home. Mostly these things happen when a child doesn't have anywhere to go. They tend to just be by themselves and they go on the streets because there's nowhere to go. But if our religious bodies can create safe space for them, I think that is the part that can be complete to support the children. The government should create systems, and these systems is really key. Sometimes when you speak with the DOFSU, and of course DOFSU really work in a hospital, they are really helpful, but mostly they mention that they don't have more resources sometimes regarding just in case a child is being sexually abused at home and they've been reported to them in a hospital. Do they have places that they can put the child or homes they can put the child? Yes, they have some places, but it's not enough. And sometimes it has to do with someone's house. But if they have a safe space for children like that, it will be much helpful. And sometimes they complain about it. So government should create systems. Every institution should create systems, have child protection officers and safeguarding officers to provide support for the kids. Now, we are running up. When the child comes to you and tend to report to you the things that they are going through or the challenges that they are going through, what do you do as the person listening to them or as a professional or the person that their first point of correspondence? What do you do? The things you are supposed to do or expected to do. First, you have to stay calm and not make the child feel bad of themselves. You have to listen carefully from what the child says and believe what the child is saying. This one when you have to ask questions about what did you go and do there? Why did you wear this to the place? What did you make the child feel bad of making them feel that they are the ones who caused whatever happened. And also, whatever the child actually tells you, take it as it is. Don't put your own words or embellish it or add more flesh to what the child is saying. Also, don't extremely assure the child or make promises to the child that, so what you've told me, we'll make sure that we'll deal with the person. Or situation like what you're telling me, I'm not going to tell anybody about it. It's just between us. I won't even tell your mother about it. For example, if the father is the one who did it, I'm not going to tell your mom about it. That's extreme promises. You don't have to give extreme promises. However, make the child understand that what they've told you, thank you for telling me about it. However, to be able to provide support for you, if there's a system in a hospital or in a space or in a school or church, I have to bring this person in and we'll make sure that nobody will hear what's happening, but we'll be able to protect you and help you and give you guidance and then all that to help the child. But if you make promises that I'm not going to tell anybody about it, I'm going to keep it between us, it doesn't help. So that's one. You are also expected to follow the procedures there is in the institution. Advisably, and that will be part of our second part too, there should be structures, there should be systems that helps. And you always have to report immediately. Don't keep it to yourself that I want to keep it. In my school, whenever there's a concern, within the next 48 hours, there should be feedback from the concern. There should be information collected already. We should have met already all the people that could get information from, and there should be an action within 48 hours. So immediately it comes by morning, by afternoon, we're already on it working. So this is really concerning. You cannot keep information to yourself or report later. Maybe we're about to end the day. I'll report tomorrow morning. No, report it as it is, there and there. And if there's anything they should start working on it there and there. Don't keep it to the next morning, because as little as it might sound, it could be big the next moment. What are some of the things that you should not do? One, you should not investigate yourself. Actually, you are not CID, so you shouldn't even be investigating yourself, right? You don't collect the information all by yourself. If there are systems and structures, take it to the next person ahead of you and then work together with it. And also, you should not decide that the abuse happened. So you have to ask, is it true that it really, really happened? A question that sometimes I hear most of the time and it really worries me. Is it true that the person actually penetrated you? Why do you have to ask questions like this? It's only the next person, or when it goes to the security services, or it goes to the psychologist, and they have ways that they can guide to get more information from the child on what happened. But you've not been trained entirely, and then you're asking questions like this. It's too provocating, right? Which will tend to affect the child most of the time. Also, don't discuss incidents with other staff members or other colleagues. Oh, have you heard? I heard that this child went through this and this and that. Do you know what the child came to tell me yesterday? As for this child, it's because of what he's been wearing. So all those things there is, you should not be discussing it with your colleague staff. And of course, as I mentioned, do not delay reporting or tend to go and confront the person who the child is reporting the incident about. Is this person that did it? I'm going to the person to you. I heard that you've done this or the child. Why do you have to do it this way? What did you do? I've heard it. I'm going to report it to the police. You shouldn't do it yourself. All right. Immediately the child reports to you. Follow the systems and then you take it from there. This is a very short acronym as well for us that has been created for us. If you would have to remember anything at all, you can remember this. That just in case a child comes to you to report anything to you, use the LEARN acronym. L representing listen to the child. E representing empathize with the child. A representing, of course, affirm what the child said. Oh, you did well. Thank you for coming by to come and tell me about this. I know it's difficult, so affirm to the child. R represents record. Document everything the child said. N representing notification. Immediately report when the child comes anything from your side. I added this for those who are clinicians from our side, and of course parents, or all those who probably might feel that it's no big deal. Actually, it's a big deal. When a child comes to report stuff like this to you, it can affect them in so many ways. And psychologically, some of the things that can show up is one, poor concentration in class. They can be with you, or poor concentration even with you at home. They can be cooking, or you're helping them to do something at home, and they'll keep staring and staring and staring and staring. Their mind is not there. They are totally out of where they are. Or they can be looking at the board and looking at you, but they are totally out of where they are. That could be one of the things of the signs or some psychological effects that could affect a child who has gone through abuse. They are thinking, they are deep thinking because they've gone through and they are scared of maybe the next place they want to find themselves. They might have negative belief on themselves. Well, I'm never beautiful. I'm not intelligent. I'm not good enough. I know people don't like me. I'm not likable. All of that could stem from a child that has gone through from a form of abuse. They tend to have difficulty trusting people or trusting themselves. So they always either self-blame or they are not just open to trust anyone. And this happens even in adults. Sometimes when you meet clients and you have conversation with them and they are not trusting people and they tend to blame themselves all the time. When you go deeper, they've gone through some form of abuse there is during their childhood or even when they were old. They tend to numb their emotions, and this happens a lot, especially when it tends to be sexual abuse. They numb their emotions, the sense that they don't know how they are feeling. They just live as it happens. They will not cry, they will not be happy. Things that actually will happen to most of us and will act it out. They won't act it out. They seem to be okay. They know they are not okay, but they can't pinpoint what emotion there is that is happening to them. So they tend to numb their emotions. They tend to be either aggressive or tend to withdraw from people. And of course, it will affect their academic performance straight up if they're kids. And then will affect their self-esteem as well. They tend to have challenges with their relationship with their friends and their teachers and all that. So these are some psychological effects that will happen to children who might have gone through some form of abuse. So reflection questions before we end our session, and I've talked a lot, which you should ask yourself before we end our session. If every child here today, or every child you are in contact with, whether at home, whether at your workplace, at the roadside, at church, at the mosque, wherever you find yourself, can choose one adult to protect them, would the child choose you? I would want you to just reflect on this question. Keep it to yourself as you move on. And then we'll call it a day for today. And if you have any questions, please, you can ask your questions. Can unmute to ask your questions, or you can put it in the chat box. And then we'll continue our session briefly for our question and answer time. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Panti. It really has been an interactive session and very practical, very informative. It's an important topic. And I think one thing that was said by, I think, is it Dr. Charles? I'm not sure. I won't try to pronounce the surname so I don't make a mistake. Was the culture aspect that in Ghana, some adults do not know the implications of some of the things they say. So they tend to just say them sometimes thinking that, oh, it's funny. Oh, but they don't know the implications of these things. So I think education is really important. Having said that, please, that the floor is open. If anyone has any question, please do go ahead and please let's have your questions. I think I saw a question in the chat box. Let me get to that right away. So while she was making the presentation, there was a point that someone said something. You mentioned crushes, and there's a question that sometimes, children have crushes from time to time, and they're asking, would you say that it's a norm, or would you say, is it not part of a child's development for them to have crushes on adults? In the person's view, sometimes, these things can be harmless. I don't know what your take is on this.
Yeah, actually, it's harmless. It's not entirely harmless. That's the thing. I meet this most of the time during my sessions with my students. You see my students coming by to talk about some things that they don't want to tell anybody about. I have a crush on this girl, I have a crush on this boy. Some even go further to ask, what should I do and what should I tell the person and all that. So, of course, especially when they're in puberty stage, they have their hormones all over and they have crushes on people, and it's not a problem. However, you can realize that a particular child, like one of the girls I have in my school, tend to have crushes on several other boys. It keeps changing. Every week there's somebody new. Every week there's somebody new. Every week there's somebody new. It makes us want to probe further to find out what's happening at home and what is making the child have crushes on people like that. So it's harmless to some extent. However, in some situation, you have to probe further. It might not be just harmless as it is. Maybe the child is a bit more exposed to things that are not supposed to be his or her age, and that's how come the child is acting that way. But for crashes, as they grow, it feels okay. Even I feel okay when the child even comes to me and tell me that I have a crush on this person. It feels okay for them to have the space to want to share. So it's good. However, sometimes you'd have to also probe further because it might not be exactly as it is. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Please, do you have any questions? I see a hand up. I believe it's Sarah.
Yes.
Yes. I have a question. Yes, we have spoken about what the law is. be protected, and we have also point out about 4 different type of abuse. So this morning I happened to pass through Nima market, and actually my heart cried deep in my heart. I felt very sad because I saw elderly women and also middle-aged women, like between 35 to 40, about 2 or 3, 4 children around them. And from one corner of the street up to the other side of the street, they are sitting on the road, and then they are begging, like asking for alms. And these little kids, what kind of abuse that they are going through, we can categorize from what we have started listing. And what does the law say about these kids? Because they are exposed to weather the whole day, and then I don't know if they actually go to school or not. And then they are from the low class family, because what we are talking about is middle class and high class family kids, but these ones are low class family kids. We know the farming or the fishing kids physically, or physically abused because early labor, but these ones are not going through that. They are sitting on the streets the whole day. Some of them we all see on the traffic lights, running up and down begging for alms. So what does the law say? And then most of these ones from one group of religious type, and then is it part of their doctrine that parents and kids to sit on the street, and then it is okay for them to go through this kind of practice? So what do we say as professionals about these ones? Thank you.
Right, Sarah, thank you for bringing this up. So this is something that I also see quite often, especially when I'm getting to work. In La Paz, there's a lot of them as well. And it's a conversation that needs to be had. It's a very important conversation that needs to be had. Why? Because it's growing and it's been there like that for a long period of time. Now, it falls under child abuse and it can cut across all the 4. Probably not sexual, but it can cut across neglect, which is more key, can cut across physical and emotional as well. Now, what exactly is our communities, our leadership, the government doing about it? Now, we as professionals, as psychologists, as doctors, as teachers, we can play our part by educating and providing support for them, but it's more on the structures we have in the countries. It's more of the structures that the government has for us in order to make things work. So I believe it's a conversation we need to have. I wouldn't be able to give you a clear-cut quote conversation answer to this, but it's a conversation that should be an ongoing conversation to provide the support for these people. Some happen to be Ghanaians, some happen not to be Ghanaians, but it still doesn't matter. So far as we find them in our society, there should be an action. So where does the action come from? We can play a part, but as I mentioned, the government plays a major part. So please, I'm not a bearer of all answers on this, but let's have a conversation on this, and then we can see how we can also have more support for such people. And of course, I'm open to hear other points of views from us in the chat box, and then those of us who will be chatting as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I can contribute to this also.
Yeah, you can.
So, my background, I'm a physician. I'm a public health and pediatric physician, but my formal training has been with the Royal College, and I've been working and informing. I work with the Children's Hospital in Accra, international project. So just to throw some highlights on this issue, the issue is actually much more complex than organized, as you may not know. The person asking is actually child trafficking. It's not just random people. There are people in charge, because I know somebody has even done a documentary on this before, and they found out that it's a system where these children collect money and they are giving it to somebody. You understand? And a lot of these people are even from the migrants population. They come in through and they use them to kind of stay on the road because, so it's really much more complex. And even when you try to take them off, as they have done in the past in Ghana has tried. Sometimes they even come back. So it's like a cartel and it's way much more complicated than just going to help them. So even trying to, it is a stronger investment, which I don't think Ghana, investing in your own people and this migrant crisis, it happens all over the world in different phases. Ghana is yet to invest enough on its own people. Yeah, and you're also talking about migrants. So I know IOM sometimes helps some of these migrants to screen and do interventions, but you can't even capture all of them because legally and illegally they are entering from different areas and borders. Most of them are not even formally migrated; they come in secretly. So it's a way much more complicated issue, and it's not as if things have not been tried to be done in the past. So it's much more complicated than we see it here.
Thank you for sharing, Doc. Just to add up on the IOM, I happen to be part of the persons who get to meet those in the at the airport when they are coming back. I mean, the South Africans that came, the Ghanaians from South Africa that came, I was part of the group that met them at the airport. And I saw the support that was given them. Personally, I felt like it wasn't entirely enough. But it wasn't their fault. It's what was there that they provided, and that was good. But there should be a system that to be able to do a follow-up. So if the systems are not there, they tend to go, and some of them will probably end up on the road, or probably not even also on the road. They might do something else that will be a vice in a society. So it's bigger, and it's a conversation that shouldn't end on this session. It's a conversation that should continue. Right. Thank you very much for sharing. Zakia. Zakia,
Hi,
can you please unmute it? Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for this is very educative. I'd like us to look at the religious institutions, or based on history. I don't have much confidence that religious institutions handle such cases when their attention is drawn to it. I really don't have that much confidence in how they usually would handle this, the approach. And I want to be educated. Maybe some people are doing a lot better. I just heard I have a teenage child that overheard our Zoom meeting, and that comment about religious houses being a safe space. Her remark was that they add more trauma with the beating and their approach to certain things. Well, we're Muslim, so I get where that angle is coming from, depending on where you attend Arabic school. Not all schools do that these days, but some have and some do. And also even the approach when somebody in the church, for example, reports an abuse, sexual abuse, for example, does it even ever get to, let's say, the right authorities to handle it? They would usually want to go with families and, forgiveness, and it ends there. So yes, I would like us to look more into that and maybe find ways to educate more, so people in those positions, because there are people who would fall on religious places, houses, organizations to help them. So if that then happens, they will be more equipped to provide the necessary assistance.
Yeah. Zakia, you're actually right on how some of the religious organizations contribute to supporting persons who have gone through any form of abuse. And of course, most of the time, they don't do it right. If you're not careful, they might even be a topic for the next Sunday's sermon. But it shouldn't be so. And it all comes down to creating systems. It all comes down to creating structures. So with the conversation we are having right now, it's not enough. The conversation we're having right now is the beginning. Where it should end is systems. Where it should end is structures. there should be constant weekly or yearly or or maybe monthly or quarterly or whatever training, safeguarding training for persons in various organizations. Whether you find yourself in the health sector or civil servant or in a school or in a church or in a mosque, wherever there is you find yourself, there should be regular conversations and trainings on safeguarding. That is one. And then two, it comes down to having a child protection team who follow a particular structure of where there's reporting, where in case any situation happens, there should be a report to them, of which the person who reported wouldn't be part of those who do the information collection. And then they'll take it from there. And then the child protection officers of the particular organization, should have resources to be able to support a child that is going through something like that. So in a situation where maybe it's a church or school, there should be contact with DOFSU, there should be contact with a lawyer, there should be contact with a particular family member of the child that the child feels comfortable with. There should be contact with the police. There should be contact with a safe space where the child will be able to sleep or get to be okay. All of it has to be done for the child protection team, right? And that doesn't end there as well. The next step also comes in with the structure. So all of that has to happen. So it all comes down to structures. The religious spaces should have a structure. They should have a system where the conversation of safeguarding doesn't come as a workshop that is once, but a consistent culture of conversation on how to protect a child and how to guide a child. Because if you're having a conversation, for example, on online grooming or online abuse, it's a whole different trajectory because it keeps changing. And everybody has to be abreast on some of these changes that do come. So anyway, just make it simple. You are right for bringing this up, Zakia, and it boils down to the structures that needs to be done or needs to be created for to make the child protection and safeguarding a conversation that needs to continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there's I think still on this particular subject or what the very last question by Zakia. So someone is asking, so is it that we are too reluctant to intervene when we suspect something is wrong? So they're asking because of our culture. Sometimes, an individual doesn't want to be a bad person or they don't want to be considered a bad person.
Right. It's a point, right? Sometimes we are reluctant, but I think more of we don't know what to do. If the structure is there, right, we know what to do next. So I'll still give an example of my school. So my school has gone through phases, a lot of phases. At a point in time, there was no well-being, conversation on well-being, and the well-being conversation started. And then as well-being conversation started, they realized that, oh, now we have mental health well-being, let's put it aside. And then we have child protection, let's put it aside. Special education needs, all right? We have a different name, EEP, let's put it aside. So we separated the two. And I realized that no, there's also a particular component that we have to concentrate on, and that's safeguarding and child protection. And then they also created that and put aside. And then there was one person who was in charge of child protection. I realized that no, the person needed a team, and then we brought a team. And then we realized that the reporting system for to help for the child protection team to get information is not helpful. So we should create some form of anonymity. So we ventured in the first system, then we changed the system to another system. So now we have a structure we are working with. So in case of any incident, there's a structure somebody follows. So in case I hear someone has been gone through defilement or rape, I have a contact I have to call. I have to call this person. I have to see this person. But that structure is not there. That is one. And also, people are scared or do not trust the system that we are in. So in case someone has gone through rape or defilement, they feel like if the person has money, if it gets up there into the court or whatever there is, how are they even going to pay the lawyer? How are they going to go back and forth? And is the situation, are they going to actually win the case? All those conversations come in, and they tend to just draw back and let's go to the family and then talk about it at home and then keep it at home and that's it. So one, it's the structure. There's no structure that helps to push it, one. And there are also other situations where they don't trust the system. They don't even know if we have to call DOFSU right now, who has the contact of DOFSU? If you are supposed to call police right now, do we actually have the contact of police? You have to call an ambulance right now. Do we have an ambulance right now? The number. So all that needs to be done. We have a part to play, and of course, there should be structures to help our society. And it's not just about reluctance all the time. Sometimes they don't know what to do.
So there's another one here. So I think, can we also look at what happens with cousins who visit during the holidays and what they are doing with the younger ones as they share rooms?
Well, that's a really important one, and I'm pretty sure doctor is coming from the point of view based on the most of the cases that she gets, because it's always about cousins and cousins and cousins here and there. So this being a trend, every family there is that do have cousins coming over during vacations, there should be this family planning ahead of time. There should be a plan. If there's no space for the person to sleep and the person has to share their room with another cousin, they should stay at where they are physically. Or if you can't, there should be a particular plan. If there's only one room, if the mother or the father want to be with the child, and then this time around the cousin will be with the same sex somewhere, there should be a plan. But if you don't plan and then it just happened that way, some of these challenges will happen. And of course, if this cousin is also a teen who probably has not thought deep into situations regarding incest or situations regarding the repercussions or psychological challenges that can go on that himself or herself and the other person, they will not think deep into it because their emotions are also all over. Their hormones are also all over. They're also trying to figure out themselves. So they will find themselves in situations like this and cause more harm. So families should have a plan before you bring cousins in situations like this. And of course, if you have the conversation on the talk in quote with the child or even the cousin as they come home, they get to know that there are some boundaries you don't cross. And there'll be free opportunities for each other to share or report when something happens at home that they will not be put to shame or they will not be guilt tripped or whatever there is. All right, thank you.
Hello, Samuel.
Hi.
I just wanted to consider something. This is your explanation for rooming, because this is a house.
Yeah.
People are going to go to sleep. You can go and open another person's room. So it's not even about having the room. I think the most important thing, as you said, is the conversation. You understand? You should also know who you're bringing to your home. Because to be honest, when you look at the evidence of people that are assaulted and some of these things, you see there's a link to family members, even high rate of this thing. And that is why some people, I remember growing up, my parents never allowed me to sleep in anybody's house overnight, whether it was a friend or, So sometimes even instilling some kind of values within your home to protect your children, you understand, is something that you should do. This cousin and whatever it is, some people do not want it. They stick to their nuclear family rule and make sure that their children are protected. Then even if they are bringing somebody in, having the talk and making sure that the person is well informed and on sex education and whatever. So sometimes I think it's the boundaries that we need to take. We should stop doing things because people did it in our generations. Now we know better and we know the evidence. So we need to act based on evidence. You understand? Not just emotions and whatever. There've been stories from even housemaids and so many things. And that is why it is very, very important, so for us to know what has happened in history and based on the evidence and acts. I have one important question. Right. There is a segment that is always missed in this discussion, especially in Ghana. It's a very sensitive issue, and it has to do with sexuality, you see, because even there's another area of vulnerability that comes when it comes to sexuality. You understand? Because we are talking about assault. Everybody's assuming is mostly male to female, you understand?
Right.
And even, and even when it's becomes more hidden and people don't even want to even address it. They just want to tuck it under the pillow, which is not also beneficial to the child. So that's one aspect. And the second aspect is that not recognizing that some people are actually different. Children already know their sexuality from early age. And even some of these crushes may be a little boy having a male crush on his teacher that is a male. So these conversations and some of these things are not actually explored and discussed, especially in the Ghanaian context, because we don't want to believe it exists. You understand? Or we don't want to accept what is real. There's a whole, but what makes it challenging is that therefore interventions are not actually tailored for these people. They are not safe spaces to even discuss this kind of people's interests because they are already condemned. They are already, stigmatized. So you don't even have, even sometimes people like you that may be even there to. I don't know how you address this. I mean, not even address it rightly because they also come in a judgmental space. You understand? Because I've seen situations where people that are supposed to know better don't even know better. They are actually acting differently when it comes to this group, and sometimes that is why they even advocate people like them to even take care of cases like this. I know we have some hot spots in Ghana that usually address some of these things. I don't know whether you have experience with them, but I just wanted to hear from you, from your experience. How have you worked with it? Do you make referrals to some of these hotspots of people that can address this issue? Because it's a neglected area, you understand? And these people exist, and they usually face a lot of mental health. It's a global issue, but when it comes to countries like this, where even with the current environment and atmosphere, it's even going to become worse. So I just wanted to hear from you your thoughts and interventions and how you go about these kind of issues.
All right, so I like the fact that you brought that up. That happens to be the part 2 of our conversation, where we talk about the sexuality part differences, and then we talk about the fact that there are even some children who are, when you said different, I thought you come to talk about some those who find themselves on a spectrum, persons who are autistic. Some of them do not have words to actually share exactly how they are feeling. I thought you can talk about that angle, and that's also part of the part 2 that we deal with. And of course, when I get cases that has to do with sexuality or has to do with persons who might be on the spectrum and do not have the words to actually express how they feel, I would in some of the cases I don't have the expertise for it, so I also refer the case to other colleagues, clinicians who could be able to have the conversation with the child like that, to be able to get more information from the child and provide support for the child and the family. So I work with other professionals in situations like that. So that's what I've been doing generally. And again, as I mentioned, with structures concerning every organization, the child protection team should have multiple of people. For example, even with language barrier, if I'm speaking English, I speak Twi, I speak Fanti, and the child that is coming tends to speak Ga or speak Yoruba, or the child speaks Frafra or Dangbe, I don't speak that. So there's also a gap there. And in creating systems, you should be able to have all these people there is I can have conversations with on that regard. If the child comes and the child is cannot, like, deaf and dumb, you have to get someone who'll be able to sign. And there should be structures and systems where they can get someone to be able to have these conversations with them. So when it comes to me, I refer to the persons who can support me with. And of course, most people I refer to are people who are also in the same space and get to understand me from my point of view. Thank you for bringing it up. Hopefully, when we have our second session, we can just to get more details on that aspect as well. So if we can have Harry, you've been up for a while, and then Zakia for the last 2, and then we can call it a day for today. Harry.
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Sambo. And thank you, Fafanto, for organizing this program. I want to ask this question. As professionals with children at our disposal, how do we draw the line in respecting family culture and tradition and our responsibility to safeguard a child? Like, for example, from where I'm coming from, you mentioned beating as physical abuse. Where I'm coming from, beating is a normal thing. Like, you should beat. We have that adage that if you don't make your child cry when they are young, you will cry when they grow. So beating is like a normal thing. It has been done for the people ahead of us, and it has helped them. So, and this is the case that you can't beat. Where I'm coming from, definitely you can't beat without seeing certain marks. Yeah, we've had that. I don't know whether it is, but that exposure where we've been beaten and you see marks and everything. And yeah, this is the case that it has. So, but you, the professional, you feel that this could emotionally or physically harm the child. How would you be able to determine when it becomes a concern to safeguard a child in such a position, and also respecting the family culture and the family tradition? Yes.
Right. So I will not ever add beating to guiding a child, actually. And this is based on the situation where I've observed a lot of children becoming timid and having self-esteem challenges because they've been physically beaten or being hurt. Now, there are different ways you can use in guiding a child, in protecting or helping a child to learn or unlearn a behavior. And of course, we have the positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. We have the positive punishment, negative punishment, and you're supposed to run through this here and there. So, but the negative punishment is what we are hoping never to get to because it has more repercussions than the good things that will come out of it or the advantages. Now, we have that in our families, or in our culture, this tend to be something that has been happening for a couple of times. It doesn't mean it's right. We know the feedback or the comment that was made by the member of parliament that has drawn a lot of conversation, including what we're having right now. It doesn't mean it's right. So even though the cultures might have a point of view on situations like this and see it not to be any problem, they have to be educated. Because conversations on mental health, conversations on physical health issues, conversations on emotional regulation and children not being able to regulate at a point in time, or conversations of interpersonal relationship challenges, all of that in the past some time ago, we're not really delve into it that much. But the world seems to be changing as we go now. There's social media, there's more anxiety than ever. There's more depression than ever. People are not content with what they have currently. People are keep striving and striving and striving. A lot of physical health issues here and there. So the world is changing. At a point in time as it's happening right now, we cannot be holding on to all the cultures that happened in the past because things are changing right now. And beating and hitting is one of them because it has more repercussions than the negative. So mostly when it happens, the parents or adults and even children who find themselves in situations like that need more education on this in order to provide the guidance and support for them. I hope I've been able to answer your question though. All right, thank you. Zakia.
Hi. So I wanted to add more to what Dr. Charles said, more like from personal experience, and the example about cousins sleeping over. From personal experience, we had separate rooms growing up, girls' rooms and boys' rooms, and even with that, there's occasions where a cousin will come into our room at night while we slept. So there's three of us amongst my cousins who know an incident that happened like that. It was just touching, not just touching, it's a big deal, but it was touching, and it was an issue amongst us three trying to figure out what to do, and we're trying to get him to know that it's wrong to do, to stop. We contemplated on discussing with my auntie so she could handle it, but then also we're worried about how she would interpret it and all of that. So eventually, one of my cousins, the older one, decided she would talk to him, and she did. I still, till date, I don't remember the conversation they had, but he put a stop to it. And moving forward, how many years on, maybe 15, 20 years on, we have children and we're cousins, and we have children who want to sleep over, who have sleepovers. They've had in the past when they were younger. But now her children are asking to sleep over, and my kids are asking to sleep over. And we both know from experience that that is not ideal because we cannot control what would happen during that sleepover. And so she was giving excuses at the beginning. I gave excuses as well, but it looks like they kept insisting on both sides. So I eventually had to talk to my kids to get them to understand that there's a chance that someone might be touching them or something while they go to sleep, and her auntie is only trying to prevent that, and so she shouldn't push it anymore, because I think she was trying to push it from the angle of the auntie, since it wasn't working with me. And so I explained to them so they understand what it is that's going on. And a couple of weeks back, I got another attempt at a sleepover, because they have one female cousin and two male cousins. And so they were like, oh, the one male cousin is in secondary school and the other one is in uni, so he's not even around. So there are no male cousins at home. Can they go sleep over? And I was like, but they're not the only males in the house, because my cousin has a husband. So it's not even just the cousins that are likely perpetrators. Adults can be perpetrators as well when we leave our children during sleepovers. And so we still need to, because of experience in the past, we're taking precautions and not allowing sleepovers at all, because that's the only way we know to prevent it from, happening if it could. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much for sharing. That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you. Thank you. Eliza. Eliza, you have your hand up. Okay, Miss Obing.
Can I continue? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so fortunately, our parents and the older folks do not get this. They equate discipline or correction to corporal punishment.
Yeah.
Right. Beating and traumatizing the child. Sometimes they go to the extent of burning the children with hot metals and all of that in the name of correction and discipline. But that's corporal punishment. So like you mentioned, a lot of the time, educating parents on the most effective method. So sometimes ask the parent, seen anything in the child. What does that tell you? They are desirable behavior, which is more of reinforcement, because just engaging in corporal punishment will just lessen the behavior just for a while, and then the child goes back, right? Yeah. So trying to understand the difference, the corporal punishment does not equate to discipline. It's not the same. That's one. Then the other thing I also wanted to add on has to do with advocacy. As professionals, in our own way, we have to advocate when it comes to some of these issues, especially Zakia, when she mentioned that in the mosque, there are sometimes things that people do. But when we continue with advocacy and education at our level, it helps. The last thing I also want to talk about has to do with assertiveness training. Most of parents nowadays want their children schooled in better environment and all of that. But one of the things that we feel to do is to train our children to become assertive. The schools may not necessarily do this for us. So our child should be able to say yes and no when they want to, right? They are neither aggressive, but they are fair. And so I would encourage parents and all of us coming up that we should instill that in our children, so that they will be able to stand up and say no. I once worked with a boss. She was a police officer, and she mentioned this to me, that she has trained her grandchild to such as an extent that when she and she's right from there, right, and the child is able to say, no, this one I don't want it, this one I don't like it. Do your mommy, right? So it's key that we train children to become assertive as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, just to also not, okay, maybe I'll put the last comment when we get there. Ivy.
Mr. Banti, sorry, just a moment, please, before Ivy comes in. So our time is fast spent. This is actually part one of the conversation. We're going to have a part two, hopefully next week, Sunday, same time, 6 p.m. So please let's keep the last contributions as brief, or our questions as brief as much as possible, and then God willing next week we'll continue. Right. So Ivy, please, you can come in.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Panti, for the presentation. Now, my question is, how exactly do we go hard on educating people who seem to have like little to no awareness of safeguarding and not even realize that certain things are wrong? I found myself like 2 to 3 nights ago having almost an argument with a grown man, telling him why an 8-year-old engaging in sexual activities is bad. And to think, forgive my words, but to think this person presents and sounds like he's saying, it was quite baffling to me. He really didn't see the reason why it was not okay for an 8-year-old to engage in sexual activity, because I had seen a video where there was a barber sort of giving 8-year-olds tips on how to have sex better the next time after they were telling him they had actually engaged in, two of them, boys, had engaged in sexual activity with like a 9-year-old girl. And then the baba was, who is an adult, was telling the kids, oh, like you're grown now, you've done well, this is how to do it better next time. And I found it so wrong. And it was just a discussion. And this adult who I was having a discussion with amongst like other people kept saying, I'm acting like I'm holy and I'm being the moral police. How do we go hard on this whole discussion so that it tends to stick? Also, we can have like some influence over people who genuinely think this way. Like, this is really their opinion. How do we go about it?
Okay. All right. Thank you for bringing this up, Ivy. Now, so I've been mentioning from my feedback that there should be systems that are very strong systems, and that has to do with we abiding with the law as well, or enforcing the law as well. As I mentioned, and I showed you the slide on what the law says. The law said basically that everything there is about children and child abuse goes fully against the law. But is the law being enforced? Is the organization or the part of the government that needs to educate the community or the country about the law, is it fully working on? Is it fully working? Is it fully enforcing the law that is supposed to be enforced? There are several gaps there is. But in all, this has to happen. These systems have to happen. These structures needs to follow. It needs to happen. We can do our part, and I like the fact that you are doing your part. I like the fact that we are all doing our part in educating ourselves. And of course, when we educate one person, we also get to educate the other person. So aside the education aspect that keeps going on in our society, the law needs to be enforced as well. And it falls on all of us to keep pushing for this law to be able to happen, where people will follow the rules and regulations, people will follow what there is, what is there to be followed. Because people don't know and people don't see the repercussions of it, because during their life, that is what happened to them. Before you spoke, Eliza mentioned the parent part who they only see that as a way of punishment for kids. It's basically because if you go detailed or deep into their conversation, you realize that when they were kids, it was the same way of parenting. Or when they were going through school, it was the same way of schooling or correcting of behavior. So that's all that they know. By trying to educate, to open them to realize that this is not the only aspect of guiding or helping a child as they grow, but these are the other ways as well. And just in case you go against this is the law of the country, and this is what it's supposed to be or how it's supposed to be followed. Are people following it that way specifically? Maybe they are not. or we know that most of us are not. So we'll do education aspect, but the structures and the systems in the country has to work to deter people and also to make people aware that these are right, these are wrong. We've grown past this. This have to be stopped. We rather encourage this, and the children should also be aware to know what is right and when they should report and where they should report to. So I think we should continue with programs and educative webinars like this in order to give us the space to be able to share and find ways and means to know the part that we need to play as professionals, as citizens of the country, and also as parents and loved ones. I'll take this opportunity to round up for today before Ms. Obeng comes in. One key thing I picked up from all this is parents being able to step up by themselves to educate themselves, more or less like relearn. So we've gone through a system where we've learned something. We probably have to unlearn the things that we've unlearned to relearn something. Parenting these days, I feel, is one of the very difficult things. It's probably the most difficult things currently because children keep changing, society keeps changing, the social media and the internet keeps changing, information keeps changing. It's just a lot out there, so much noise. So as a parent, as you are working and providing for the family, you seem to have to be able to be abreast with different ways in order to support and guide and train and educate your child or bring up your child. And that should be something that should be conscious with the parent. We can't continuously use how we were parented for our current children. And if parents embrace this, it spreads with the teachers, it spreads to the society, and it pushes the government to do what is right to support the society. So I thank you so much, guys, for this opportunity to get to speak with you. Hopefully we'll get to meet again and then have our part 2, and then we go deeper. And that will be more of conversation, more of sharing, because it's in the sharing that we learn. I've learned a lot from you as well, bringing up all these ideas from you. It's been a great opportunity for me to learn as well. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Panti. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. And of course, for helping us to think more deeply about the responsibility that we all carry towards children. To everyone who joined us, we say thank you for making the time. We do hope you join us again same time next week at 6 p.m. We'll share the link on our platforms. So if you check in the chat box, there's a link there. We have diverse communities. So please feel free to just tap the link. Any of the communities that appeal to you, please do join. We'll share the link for today's webinar as well on there so that you can have access to it. So once again, thank you for making the time, and do enjoy your evening.